Hello and welcome to this UniTaster On Demand event today, where we're going to be exploring university courses in modern languages. I am absolutely delighted to be joined today by Professor Joe Harris, who's joining us from Royal Holloway, University of London. With these events, we provide introductions to studying different subjects at university. And obviously this one today is looking at modern languages. We'll look at things like what to expect on the course, why you might want to consider it, some application tips, and also an overview of careers as well. But with that, always conscious you've tuned in to hear from our excellent speakers, not for myself. I'll pass things to Professor Joe Harris, joining us from Royal Holloway, University of London. Thank you.
Hi, my name's Joe Harris. I'm Professor of French and Comparative Literature at Royal Holloway, University of London. But don't worry if you're not studying French or planning to. What I have to say here is really going to be relevant, whatever language or languages you're studying or thinking of studying. French, Spanish, German, Italian, Russian, Chinese, whatever. Different universities, of course, offer different languages, so do make sure to apply to one that offers the language or languages that you are interested in. Now, in this session, I'm going to be covering four main areas. First of all, why consider languages? Secondly, what to expect at university when you're studying modern languages. Then a few tips for your application. And finally, thinking about careers. So firstly, why consider languages? Well, there are various answers here. Firstly, hopefully, it's because you enjoy studying languages at school. We like people who are enthusiastic and passionate about the subject, because languages are always more than just deciphering a code. If they were, we could just rely on Google Translate for everything. Rather, learning a language means learning about the culture and cultures of those places where the language is spoken. You can't learn a language without learning about those wider cultural issues, because language and culture are so inseparable. Translating from one language to another then isn't just decoding or deciphering. It involves being human, making human decisions. What will a reader from this culture understand of what we have from a different culture? So if you're interested in languages, it's often because you're interested in other cultures, other ways of thinking, other ways of seeing the world. And the more exotic the language you're studying, the greater those differences might be. Now, there are various different benefits of language learning. I think there are three, above all, I would say, but they're all interconnected. There's the cognitive benefits, what it does to your brain. There's the career benefits, which I'll come to at the end of this session, and also the personal benefits, the way it can enrich your life in different ways. The cognitive benefits, now these are all backed up by scientific studies. Now, I can't comment on the scientific sides of things, but I can suggest why it might make sense to me that language learning does these different things to your brain. Apparently, when you're learning a language, bits of your brain physically grow and develop. After 3 months of studying a foreign language, people's brains have grown in 4 different places, including the hippocampus, which is the one bit I've actually heard of. Learning a language can help to ward off dementia and Alzheimer's in the long run. It promotes elasticity in the brain, and it produces a huge range of other cognitive benefits, improving your memory, concentration and attention span, listening skills, general intelligence, verbal and non-verbal reasoning, your problem-solving skills, even in totally different disciplines such as maths, creativity, multitasking skills, all of these things. And these things make sense to me. Learning a language obviously involves your memory, storing and retrieving information. Learning a language puts these things into practice. Your memory, your attention are like muscles that you can develop with training. And so language learning is like a mental workout. But also, once you've learned words, you can create new routes in your mind, new connections between words and ideas, between words and their etymologies. It can help you remember things more easily and improve your vocabulary in English, because English is full of foreign words from all sorts of languages. Similarly, knowing the grammar and the syntax of other languages can give you a better understanding of English as well. It can really improve your written and your spoken style. Learning a language can also improve your creativity, flexibility, your general intelligence, because learning a language, as I've said, can give you new ways of looking at the world, of seeing and understanding things in different ways. Languages shape the way that we understand and divide up the world, but we don't always notice this until we start to learn another language. With one language, we tend to think that the world is self-evident, that something is something because it has a name. Words then can sometimes sort of short circuit our thought, make us, they do the thinking for us. But when we learn another language, we're given other ways of looking at the world. And this can prompt and promote, develop our skills of what's called divergent thinking, the ability to come up with multiple solutions to a single problem. So language learning gives us those skills, and also greater cross-cultural, intercultural skills as well. It can also help improve our reasoning, logical reasoning, problem-solving skills, because learning languages means developing a certain degree of abstraction. We take a step back, actually, from thinking in words, and we can spot structures, patterns, and so forth. For a similar reason, people who are good at languages tend to be more talented at maths and at music as well, because both of those disciplines also involve recognizing certain structures and patterns. And all of these skills, these benefits I'm talking about, things that will help with careers as well. They are what employers will want. I'll come back to that. There are also personal benefits to learning a language. I want to really give you a sense of enthusiasm and a love of the subject itself, but also learning languages can give you other personal benefits that make life more enjoyable. You can travel the world. It's easier to live somewhere else if you speak the language. It can also, the other one that I think is most interesting here is it can make you happier. Learning a language, tracking your progress, meeting goals of learning new words, understanding new things, triggers apparently the same part of your brain that eating chocolate does. It activates the brain's pleasure center. There are many other examples as well that I've listed here. I'm not going to go into detail about all of them, but it can improve your confidence if you've gone and lived in another country and so forth. It can make you more critically aware, make you able to make new friends and so forth. So lots of different benefits there. These are all great benefits then. So what to expect when you're studying modern languages at university? Well, in some ways, it's quite hard to generalize about what to expect from a modern languages degree program. It's not always exactly what you think it is. And it's not always exactly what you might have been learning in your A-level studies. Languages as a subject can mean quite different things in different universities. Some degrees are vocational. You might be learning business French, for example, while others are more openly cultural. For example, you might be studying Italian literature. The common denominator, of course, is that you will have lessons teaching you the language itself. Now, these don't necessarily take up the majority of your time, but they are really the core, the backbone of your studies when you're studying modern languages. They're often compulsory, and you will need to pass these modules in order to progress to the next year of your study. And these courses are there to improve and reinforce your grasp of the language itself. Reading, writing, speaking, listening in the languages, sometimes translation as well. These courses will often be taught by native speakers, particularly the oral classes. And of course, although you'll be learning the languages, they're not going to be teaching you the languages in a vacuum. Rather, learning a language means getting engaged with the whole culture. So you'll often be discussing particular themes and topics that will help you understand the culture of the country or countries where the language you're learning is spoken. It's also worth noting that many universities, such as my own, Royal Holloway, give you a chance to pick up another language from scratch, what's often called ab initio. It's a wonderful opportunity, and it's never too late to start to learn a new language. So you might want to consider that. Sometimes these courses are extracurricular, so not part of your degree formally, but often they can be as well. It can take a lot of time and effort to pick up another language, but obviously it's really worth it in the long run. Now, alongside these core language modules, you'll often also have what are sometimes called content modules or cultural options or whatever. Now, these ones aren't focused primarily on language learning, but they're putting this language learning into practice, teaching you about the culture more generally. In many universities, especially the more traditional ones, many modules will be literary in focus. So you can be reading the literature of the culture, the novels, the poems, the plays, and you'll often be being taught by people who are real published experts in the field. And it's a wonderful experience to read literature in the original. If you read an author like Kafka, for example, in the original, you'll realize how much has to get sacrificed even in a really good translation. And of course, reading in the original will help develop those language skills as well. It's a virtuous circle. The core and the options modules will be sort of feeding off each other and really helping you perfect your command of that language. And in fact, this means that in these courses, you'll be developing exactly the same skills that someone studying English literature will be developing, but you've got that added bonus of learning a language or two on the side. But it's not just literature. Different universities have different strengths and interests. So, for example, in some universities, you might be studying linguistics, the study of language and communication. That doesn't always just mean learning more grammar, but rather considering and thinking about the structures, the processes, the histories behind grammar and languages and communication. Other places might teach history and politics, so you'll get a sense of the political history of a country. The colonial past, for example, struggles for independence, all of these different issues. Other places will teach maybe translation, a more vocational course about how to put your language skills into practice and develop those skills, the intersection between one language and another. Another one of our great strengths is film and visual culture, painting, photography, different forms of visual art. You can learn how to read a film or a painting, a picture. It's an odd idea to think of these, think of reading a film, but it's an odd sounding phrase, but it does remind us that it's not a straightforward process. It's not a passive process to sit back and watch a film. So modern languages can be whatever you want it to be, depending on your choice of university here. And in terms of the teaching itself, it takes place in various different forms, lectures, seminars, and so forth. Generally speaking, over the course of your studies, things will become more specialized over the different years. Normally, it will be a 4-year degree in England and Wales, 5-year, I think, in Scotland. And what makes the modern languages degrees distinctive, I think, is that you normally will have a year abroad, typically after the second year, where you actually go and live in the country where you're studying the language, where you're learning the language. The first year, of course, tends to be more introductory, giving you a foundation in those skills for those, or the language and the content courses. The second year, those options will tend to become a bit more specialized. And in the final year, you'll often be given some really quite specialized research-led teaching by real experts in the field. It's also often the chance where you'll be given, the point at which you're given the opportunity to write a dissertation or a long essay on a subject that you are interested in that comes out of your studies earlier on. And of course, in the year abroad as well, there are various different things that you might do during that period. You might be studying at a partner university. You might be finding a work placement, doing a job that you've managed to find for yourself, or doing a language assistantship as well. So teaching English at a school or occasionally a university as well. Now, I should point out, of course, that with Brexit, there are question marks over some of these schemes, and universities are working both together and separately to try to really do the best for their students. So, these things are, well, it's an ongoing discussion about how many of those options will be available, but something to bear in mind. Now, in terms of teaching modes, again, there's a lot of variety in different places, but typically you'll have some lectures. There will be language classes, often quite small group things, where the teaching is done in the language itself. There'll be small seminar groups as well for the content courses, and assessment can take on all different forms and modes as well. So it's impossible really to generalize that. I don't have as much to say about application tips here because different universities do things in different ways. Sometimes applications are processed centrally, sometimes they're considered in detail by teaching staff. Sometimes applications will involve an interview where you'll be assessed both generally in English, but also asked to have you'll have a conversation in the language or languages that you are applying for. So do check that the university that you're studying, that you want to apply to, offers the languages that you want to learn at the level you want to study at. As I've mentioned before, it's a good idea to also consider taking up another language ab initio. It's an ideal opportunity to. Do check the entry requirements as well. It's useful to know that. And consider your personal statement. When you're writing a personal statement, a good personal statement will show enthusiasm and motivation for the subject. If you can show that you've gone above and beyond the things that you've learned at school, then that can be particularly useful. If you've studied one film or one text in class, it's a really good idea to show that you have watched or read other films, read other texts or whatever by the same people or by other people. Even reading around in English translation is a good first step here, because these things show that you have an intellectual curiosity. You're not just limiting yourself to what you've been learning in class, but trying to go beyond that. So try to think, what have you done beyond what's been taught in your school? It's a really good idea to expose yourself to the language. And this is easier than ever these days, even if you don't leave the house. You can read newspapers online and blogs. You can watch TV series and films on streaming services. These things are very easy to do nowadays because of the internet, and this will show your the university that you're really living with the subject. Languages isn't just a 9-to-5 job, something that you dip into during the school day or the university day. Rather, it's something which is rich enough to seep into and fill and enliven other aspects of your life as well. So there are lots of different things you can do in order to show and develop your enthusiasm for the subject, and think about what you've enjoyed the most. A good personal statement will communicate some of that enthusiasm. And of course, bear in mind, if you have any questions, please get in contact with the languages admissions officer at the different universities, or the head of the language that you're interested in studying. We're always happy to help. So do please feel free to ask us as well. Finally, we should think about moving beyond university to careers. Now, in fact, there are lots of career benefits to learning languages. There's still this cliche that a degree in languages means that you end up having to be a translator or a teacher of languages. And that's really not the case. The world of work is changing really rapidly. Nowadays, most jobs train their employees in-house. They don't expect you to come with any specific technical vocational skills for that specific job. What employers really want are general skills and aptitudes. This is what university courses of any type will give you. And languages gives you pretty much all of these to a really high level. Remember what I said earlier about those cognitive benefits. And so it's worth bearing in mind, on average, graduates who have more than one language under their belt enjoy better career opportunities, a higher salary, greater job mobility if you want to change jobs, but also greater job security if you want to stay in your job. Languages make you more valuable to employers, because employers like languages with graduates with language skills. Recently, in a recent survey, 74% of employers said that that multilingual employees were more attractive to their organization. So languages can give you that critical edge. They can make you more valuable to employers. Language learning can help to close some of those unfair pay gaps that still disadvantage women and people from certain ethnic backgrounds. So in lots of different ways, having languages under your belt is really useful here. Because graduates who have languages have shown that they have key transferable skills. Obviously, in a global workplace, multilingual employees are attractive because they can communicate with and interact far more easily within multiple different communities. But more generally, a degree in languages or a degree involving languages is a certificate that proves that you have or that you've developed certain key transferable skills: global intercultural awareness, communication skills, as I said before, even in English, of speaking and writing. It shows that you have intelligence, creativity, critical skills, abstract thought, but also that you have that motivation, that self-discipline, those time management skills to learn a language well, and that you're adaptable, you're open to other cultures and flexible. So careers, well, in terms of careers, learning a language is a wonderful, will really give you a great grounding in these things. At the end of 2020, the British Academy and its various counterparts across the English-speaking world released a document called The Importance of Languages in Global Context, an International Call for Action. And they stressed the importance and the urgency of language learning for international cooperation, for respect, for tolerance, and even perhaps survival in an age of threats such as COVID, environmental disaster, rising poverty levels. They say that language skills foster literacy, educational attainment, and a confident mindset. They encourage us to be flexible, adaptable, and globally mobile. In this globalized world, just knowing English isn't really always going to be enough. And languages graduates do tend to earn more on average than most humanities graduates. If you have a look at this recent chart here, learning languages will really give you that flexibility, but also that solid grounding, which will help you in a variety of different careers. There's a huge range of fields that you might end up going into. This is just a range of some of the careers that our students have gone into over the last few years. As you can see, it's not just languages per se or postgraduate study, but banking, the civil service, arts management, charities, law, and so forth. Languages is a wonderful subject to study and can enrich so much of your life, both your personal life and your professional life. I really couldn't recommend it more thoroughly. Thanks very much.